started. Wait, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I think my sound was off. That's why I didn't hear anything when we were doing the record. So now you should be good with everything here. So just a few announcements before we get started. We went over a lot of content the past few days. We essentially went through all of our initial stuff within Rails, and then we brought in React yesterday as well. So all of the topics that we went over, they all connect together into this whole full stack environment. And that's what we've been talking about. So last week we talked about the models and database. The other day we talked about the controllers and routing. And yesterday we talked about the views. I kind of want to go more into the views today just because it is a lot and we only went on a single level. And that's where we are going to be continuing on today, is to continue the views. The other thing is that I also released earlier this review and resources, as well as other React stuff that you can take a look at. And this will help you on stuff that you are struggling on. If you're still struggling on the data types and the initial stuff that we went over on week one, take a look at the coding playlist. They will kind of break down each of the terms one by one. And then here are all of the new updated Ruby resources that we are going to be providing. The one that I would recommend is this Rails book. This one is something that they always keep up to date. And he is a really good author. This one is the newest version of Rails. And then it's kind of like an online book that you can go through. And not only that, you get to build like other projects within the book, like a toy app, static pages and all that, but this is just a pure Rails application. There's also some podcasts that you can listen to and take a look at and stuff like that. So I really recommend this Rails book to really help utilize the models and the controllers. Don't really worry too much about the views within Rails, because again, we're using React for the views. So if you ever see anything with the views inside of Rails, we're doing it a little bit differently from there. This is mostly for the stuff for HTML and CSS. The main stuff is going to be how it kind of connects everything together. So that is more for your HTML, CSS resources. And then this kind of goes more into more styling. So this is how we can use some positioning of what we have with the grid and Flexbox, with the CSS Diner, as well as the Flexbox Froggy. So that is what we did with that as well. And then these are some just pure JavaScript resources to go over. And this is just for vanilla JavaScript and ES6. This one right here is a really good resource for you to take a look at, where you do 30 projects for 30 days. And all of it is with a really good my projects, as well as some of the instructions that you have there. Some of the stuff that is really useful is that they use a lot of ES6 syntax, so you can kind of get used to that with that there as well. This one is also a good one for JavaScript for cats. This one kind of explains JavaScript more into depth, but it kind of explains it to a cat, so a much more simpler solution of how to explain things. And then lastly, we have some of the React resources. There is the new one of this video, which is a very long tutorial. It's about a few hours long. And then most of the stuff, this one is a little bit out of date, but you'll get to see it here and there. But these two are the most up-to-date ones. The ones towards the top are the most up-to-date. Now we'll kind of go more into React and React stuff as well. And there are also your other ones, like your roadmaps of what to look at a little bit later. Then you'll also see a whole playlist of the previous cohorts playlist, with all the videos that we taught for the last time. And that one was for the spring cohort that we have there. So those are all your resources that you have available to you. So you can kind of take a look at everything with what we have. And the main thing is that with the topics that we are going to be covering, they are going to be a little bit difficult at first, but the more we do them over and over again, you'll start to see patterns. And that's what we are going to be learning, is patterns here. So your controller has a certain way of how we fill them out. Your routes have a certain way of how we fill them out. And then each of these stuff inside of the React side also have a way for us to fill them out as well. So we'll be learning more of the pattern for the front end side a little bit more. so you can kind of understand and kind of see where that is coming from, and then how we can utilize that pattern from there. But yeah, most of it is going to be working with a lot of projects and utilizing everything that we have thus far. So yeah. So I do know that Will is planning to have a presentation tonight about his presentation, and also to talk a little bit more about the hackathon that is coming this Saturday. So I believe he said 6. Let me double check with him. If not, it might be towards the end, but let me double check. So yeah, we'll kind of see what's going on there with that. But we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about our project so far. But yeah, any questions about the resources or anything that I released? And again, if you know that you won't be able to attend the hackathon, let us know as soon as possible so we can kind of get you started with the makeup work and all that there. Awesome. So let's go ahead and talk more about our project in a sec. So with our project, we have a multi-level models that we are going to be doing with. And what we typically would do is that we need to finish up everything in the back end for that model, and then everything in the front end for that model. And then after that, the whole entire model is going to be working from front end to back end. And that's kind of the goal of each of the levels that we are working with, is that we need to have each level working with both full stack, meaning that is both front end and back end, for it to go ahead and work with everything that we have all together. So when you are working inside of an initial team, make sure that you kind of cater to that process, especially for this week's hackathon. When you are going to be working inside of a team or a small group, make sure that you do everything inside of a model first before you move on to the next one. The reason being is that the way that we have our application laid out, especially here, right now, when we are going to go ahead and submit anything, the only thing that I can see is only the subs, right? So that's the only thing that we currently have done and currently are working on, is the subs here. So if you have someone else working on the comments and topics, if you have no way to get to there, meaning that there's not a different page or a different section that shows all of the topics, that shows all of the comments, then there's no way for you to reach that code. So instead of having you focus on the individual levels, you would mostly be focusing on completing this fully before you move on to the next level. So now, since we already finished up the sub, we can move on to the next level, which is topics. And with topics, that would be the next step. I'm not going to work on comments. I'm not going to worry about comments yet, because there's no way for me to reach or even see my comments at this point, right? Because the way that the associations are, comments belong to a particular topic. So with that, that means that you need to have a topic first, and topic to have fully functional before you go into the comment at all. And that's kind of the reason why that we're going one level at a time, is because that the way that our tables are set up is that we need to do it by one level at a time, because we need to have them created, fully functioning, and then we can move on to another place. There are some cases that that's not the case. Let me kind of show you other projects that could not follow that, but it will be very similar. Let me see what we have here. Yeah, this is a one right here. I don't know, that might be a little bit confusing, huh? Yeah, let's just do this one for now. So this is kind of like having a store in a sense, but here we have a little bit of a associations between these two tables here. So this one is something that we'll talk about a little bit later, a little bit when we talk about more advanced association, but let's just focus mainly on these two things of items and checkouts. So technically, this is both belonging to the user, is that the items belong to the user and the checkout also belongs to the user. And with that, we are going to go ahead and have that associations between two of them. So the parent is the user, the child is the items, parent is the user, the child is the checkouts. So with that type of association, because of that level of associations, when I go ahead and create an item or a checkout, I need to have the user first. So then that is something that you need to finish first before you move on to the next level, is that user. But if you go ahead and go on to the next level, it really doesn't matter whether you worked on the items or checkout first. As long as you have one of them or both of them done, then that is, with that association, that would also work out as well. So there are some cases where you can do stuff asynchronously, meaning that you can have one person work on items, one person work on checkouts, because they both share the same parent. So after user is done, then you can kind of split up it by model if you want to. But then if you have another level below that, you have to make sure that both of these are done before you go one more level down. So just note that when you are working on a particular project, based off of the project and the level of associations between the topic or between the objects, make sure that you have the parent done before you move on to the child. So that's kind of the snippet of why we're not jumping around everywhere with everything that we have. So let's go ahead and continue on with our project. And then we'll kind of talk and review a little bit more about topics. And then we'll also do it again with comments. So I kind of want to review from your models, from your controllers, routes, all within topics. And then we'll talk about comments there. It looks like Will is going to be doing the presentation towards the end of class, not the beginning. So that's what we'll be doing, is that we'll kind of close things off and then we'll wait for him then. So let's go ahead and kind of take a look at everything that we did thus far, and then we'll move on to the next level. So right now we're still working on the Reddit's project. So we are continuing on this project right here. And then we also already built out some of the items. But let's talk about what of the stuff it is that we already created. So let me go ahead and collapse everything. Starting off first is going to be our sub model. So with our sub model, we went ahead and we also included that the sub has a title. And then inside of the models, we put all of our validations. So that is where we are validating the data before it goes to the database. So when we create a model, it also creates for us a migration file inside of the migrate folder. And again, what a migration is that it is going to be instructions to be applied to the database. That's what this is. It's just instructions to be applied to the database. It's not until we run a db migrate, then it will go ahead and apply those changes into the database. So that is our first level, is that we created the sub model, and then we migrated and did everything in the database, and then we did some validations. Don't worry about this yet, because that doesn't come until topics. So we'll come back to that. After that, we went and we created our controllers in the backend. So when we created our controllers, it would be inside of the API folder. The reason being is that we're having our backend be our API. And again, an API will allow two applications to work with each other for you to go ahead and perform certain actions. And with this controller, it does follow a specific pattern. And all a controller does is that it is just a traffic direction. So based off of your initial routes, which is inside of your config routes, these are going to be your API routes. So this line right here, more specifically, is going to create all of the routes for you to lead somewhere into your controller. So this line here will go ahead and provide for you a routing format for you to lead somewhere inside of your individual controller here. So this will cover most of the CRUD actions that we have that we'll be using. So index, show, create, update, and delete, those are the routes that we have here. Each of these, what we would kind of pair up is that when we go ahead and have our React talk to our Rails, we need to know what it is that it's trying to do. The way that we do that is that we give it a HTTP verb. So one of these HTTP verbs is what we are going to be using. Not only that, we're also giving it a URL pattern, because some of these do also have a URL pattern. Based off of that, both of those together will go ahead and lead you somewhere inside of the controller. So this will go into your API, your subs controller, and then create. So that is going to go into your traffic director, which is your controller here. And with your controller, this kind of defines what we would do if we were to do some of these CRUD actions here. So it would go ahead and give you all of these subs or a single sub or create a new one, update it or destroy it. And based off of that, depending on what it is that's doing, it will go ahead and visit the database, or it will go ahead and try to create something or update something by checking out the params. What the params is that it only requires a specific format that it will allow, as well as what we are allowing inside of that particular object. So it only looks for an object that is created by sub and then title as well. So with that, it will also go ahead and double check the data types. And then when we go ahead and save it, it will also go ahead and check the validations as well. If everything looks good, then we are going to be rendering it back. If not, we will do an error. The same thing kind of happens when we do an update as well, is that it also will check for the parameters, make sure it is all in the right format, and then make sure that it is good to go, or else it will return an error. So that's all we need to do for the backend for a model, is the particular model creation, the routes, and then the controller. After that, we would need to create our front end, which is going to be labeled as our client folder. And this is where all of our front end will go ahead and be located as inside of our client folder here. So then inside of our client folder, inside of our source here, inside of our app, this is where we are rendering out our component of subs. And this is where the front end will come into play. So this is where we can visually see stuff inside of our web page, is the front end right here. So inside of our subs particular component, this is actually called a higher order component, meaning that it is going to have a lot of other components that will kind of inherit from it. So with this, the main purpose of this particular component is to specify all of the CRUD actions that is doing on the front end, and also communicating that to the back end as well. So that means that when I go ahead and submit this form, it knows what to do for when it adds. When I delete, it knows what to do when it deletes, and same thing with edit. Not only that, it will also give you other components that will correspond to each CRUD action. So for example, this component right here, that's for adding a particular sub. This component here, this is for updating. And then we also, oh, thank you. I forgot that I didn't run my server. Let me run my server so this makes more sense. Give me 1 sec. You don't have to run your server yet. I'm still talking about some items here. So with this, let me create a few more. We are able to go ahead and delete when we press the delete button, and then we're able to see all of the sub as well as a single sub here. So we can see all of them or a single element there. So that handles all of the CRUD actions on the front end. And then when we submit it, it should also do that in the back end as well as inside of the database. So that's how you know you have a fully functioning application, when it both works on the front end and both inside of the back end. So that's kind of the result that we are displaying. How to do is a little bit different. So with that, inside of our subs, we define these functions that we have here. And then we also talk, and this is going to be using React. And with React is a little bit different than Ruby on Rails. The reason why we are using React is that we are using stuff as a component base. So that way we can transfer them into other places and reuse them with the properties that a component has. So when we have a component, it comes with two things that we will be using. The two things are going to be state, which is storage, and then props, which is properties that we can pass down from one component to another component. So that is what we are going to be using React the most of. So with this type of component, this is where we are going to define all of the CRUD actions that we are performing both front end and back end. So here we just have initially, we are storing all of our items inside of the front end. So this is how we can display our stuff here, is that we are grabbing it from the front end, or grabbing it from the back end and then displaying it from the front end. And then anytime that we need to go ahead and do a Axios call, what this will do is that it will go ahead and it will try to grab all of the information. So here it will grab the HT verb, which is a get. So it knows that we are either doing this or this. So we are doing one of these requests here. Not only that, it also gives you a URL pattern. So then this is a get request / API / subs. Then that will go ahead and match up with this one right here, because this one needs an ID. So that's why it's not matching that one. This is the one it's matching. So then it will go ahead and go into your routes, see that it is pointing to your index method inside of your controller, and then it will run all that code inside of your controller. So then because of that particular URL pattern, this will go ahead and render JSON all of the subs from our database using active record, which then will translate into SQL. And then with that response, we are doing some promise handling. If it works, then we will go ahead and store it inside of our state. If not, we'll go ahead and error and console log the error. We're actually going to be doing that for all of our CRUD actions for now. Later on, I'll show you a better way to handle our errors. So we're doing that for your index to show all of them. We're also doing that for adding, updating, and destroying as well. And again, they all follow this pattern that we have inside of the sheets over on this side. So this will be model name using the state. Here's your use effect. Here's your add. Here's your update. And then here is your delete. So that's the pattern that it is going to be using. The only thing is that if you are using another one, which is going to be your parent-child relationship, it would be slightly longer just because you need to include the parent's information and as well as the child information at times as well. So that's the only difference between parent and child, is that all of the pattern is still the same. You're just adding a little bit more to the URL pattern here. And you'll get to see that once we go one more level down. So that will go ahead and define all the functions, but we still need to go ahead and build out the UI for the user to interact. So the first thing that we did was we built out the sub form. So with the sub form, that is this item right here, this element right here. This will go ahead and ideally, when you go ahead and submit this, it will look a lot more better and act a little bit better. It will go ahead and create a sub. So if I go ahead and do tech, that will go ahead and create a sub. So with that, we are going to be storing that within the component itself. And then we are also building out the form here using JSX. So the main thing is that within the form, we have our handle submit. And then these three things of what we have inside of the input, those are the main things for the inputs. Everything else is optional, but highly recommended, right? So the three things are the name, the value, and the on change. The name is, what is this field for? So if I have multiple fields, how do I know that this field is for the title? That's what this is saying, is that this will label what it is that this field is for. This is where I am storing the field's information. I'm storing it inside of my subtitle here. So that will go ahead and show where it is that I'm storing that particular information. And then this on change here, this is just, we are going to have what we are typing in stored within the component state. So let me kind of show you how that works. So inside of this sub form here, right now inside of our state, we have an empty title. So as soon as I type in something like so, it will store whatever I type into the component state. That's what that line of code is doing. And then if I make changes, it will also make changes as well. So whatever is inside of this box, it will also be inside of our component state. And then required is just a front-end validation. So I can't just submit blank. It will give me this. If I try to submit blank, that's what the required is for. That one's really good to use in your front-end validation, but it's not super helpful because we also need to have it at multiple levels. So that is why we need to have front-end validation, your controller validation, models validation, and database validations. We already have all those inside of here. Because the reason why I say that is that inside of here, when I am going to go ahead and look at this input, even though that this is a required field here, I can as easily manipulate the HTML, delete it, and now it's no longer required. So now I can go ahead and submit this. But this actually gives me an error. It gives me a 422 error. And now, not only that it is hitting my controller, it is also hitting my models. So when I go ahead and submit this, this will go ahead and kick back an error, and it is stopping because this is blank. And one of our validations is that you can't have this blank. It has to be something that we have inside of our inside of the field that isn't blank here. So that's why we have multiple level of protection of inside of our controllers or models and our front end. So it can stop at any of those levels and it won't go through. If we didn't have any of those, if I were to go ahead and submit this, then we would have a sub with no title. And that wouldn't be helpful for anyone. So that's why that is good to have there. Placeholder is just the text inside of your info box there. And then you would repeat the process for all of your attributes. The only thing is that the title is the only attribute of sub. Later on, when we go into topic and comments, it will have a little bit more attributes that we can go with. So you can kind of see how our forms will change depending on those different types of formats, as well as those data types and our attributes there. And then a submit button. Once we go ahead and submit, it will go ahead and run this logic here of adding the sub, which will go ahead and reference this add sub function that we passed down. So with this add sub, we are passing this down to the props, and then we are grabbing that inside of props here. And then when we submit, we are calling that function. And not only that, we are also passing in what we are storing within the state. So then with that information, this will go ahead and grab whatever title it is that I have, and then it will go ahead and run it through this particular URL pattern. So it does a post request /API /subs. So then it looks inside of the routes. This is a post request /API /routes. So it looks like we are doing a create. So after it goes to the routes, it will then go ahead and point to you to the controller. It'll then do this create. It'll try to see if you have the right parameters. So that's what this will do. If it is, then it will go ahead and create it as well. And if it does it, then it will go ahead and give you an error. So that is what the create form is doing there. And then we're also resetting it as well to clear out the form afterwards. So that will handle this particular component here. Then afterwards, when we create it, it will be then be grabbed within our use state. And then this is where we are having it stored, is within our subs plural component within the component state. So that's where we have it stored, but to display it, we need to have a component to actually display the information. So that is where we are going to be calling inside of our subs. Another component that we have is our sub list. In our sub list, we are going to be passing in subs, which is the array of objects coming from our database. So then inside of our sub list, we are saying all subs. That's where this title is coming from. And then we are mapping through all of the subs of the array of objects. And for each of the subs, we are displaying another component here called sub, which is this component here. And this will show a single sub. So this will show a single sub here. Not only that, it will also show the subs information. So I am displaying the ID and what the title is. So here is the ID and then what the title is. And then we also gave some functionality as well. So we gave it the edit and then the delete. So that will handle the index and the show action. So that's what the CRUD actions in the front end would be doing. So with this button, if we go ahead and do a edit, it will go ahead and render some of our conditional rendering. So what conditional rendering is that based off of a condition, we are displaying one thing versus the other. So here you can see that right now, by default, it doesn't show any edit form. But if you go ahead and do edit here, then it will go ahead and display the form from there. I guess we should also do a cancel button. So that way, if they don't want to edit, they can go out of it so they can toggle back out. So we'll do that when we go into our follow-up. So with that, this is actually showing the same subform that we have here. The only difference is that we are passing in different props. So let me show you what I mean by that. So this form and this form, they're both the same component. To prove it to you inside of my dev tools, you can see that we have this subform here, as well as this subform here. Those are the same component that we are using. The only difference is that the properties that we're passing from parent to child. So from subs to subform, I'm passing in the add functionality. So that's how I know this form up here is for adding, is because it gives it the add sub property that we have. This form right here has different props. Is this form here. It has the ID and everything that that object has. It has the edit and the update function that we have here. So that's how it knows that this one is for edit. Even though that we are going to be using the same form, it knows that one is for add and one is for update because of the different properties that we are passing it. So with that, we just need to tweak our form a bit so it also handles our update as well. So one thing that we did add is this use effect. What this use effect is that it checks for if we are adding. Because again, we're using this form in multiple locations. So it will check for if we are adding or updating. If we are updating, then it will pass in the ID. If it's not with the ID, then it won't do anything at all. So if it does have an ID, we are going to go ahead and pre-populate the form. So that's why you can see it already pre-populated. And then afterwards, everything is this exact same. I'm just saying edit instead of add here. That's the only slight difference. And then up here, when we go ahead and submit, we do a similar type of logic of whether we are checking for if we are updating or not. If we are updating, then we are passing in the ID. With the ID, then we are going to perform an update. So with the update, that one is going to be all the way from our subs. So this is how we are going to be updating this. We'll go ahead and do a put request, which is this request right here. And then it will go ahead and follow this URL pattern, and then it will go ahead and perform the update inside of our controller. So then inside of our controller, it will then go from and update it with your subparams, check if everything's in the right format. And if everything's all good, it will go ahead and return it. If not, it will show errors. So you can kind of see where it jumps around a lot with where your data is coming from. So it goes from the form to your routes, to your controllers, and then your models, and then back to your controllers, and then back into your front end, right? So that's where the data is kind of flowing. It's multiple levels of where it's going from. After that, we are closing out the form here. And that's all there is to do a update, is that a lot of stuff is already there for us. We don't have to create a whole new component for update. We're just using what we have for the add, but change it up just slightly so it also works for the update. So now this form inside of our subform can go ahead and work for both add and update, just because we can go ahead and change the particular props of it. So this is that particular function that we are doing. And then this is how we are updating it in our front end. And we are passing this each level at a time. So we are passing it from the subs plural to the sub list, from the sub list to the sub singular, and then from the sub singular to the sub form again. So that is where it is grabbing the information, is that it is eventually starting at one particular point, and then we are inheriting all that down towards your individual levels of your components, because there is a tree structure inside of here as well, where there is also parent and child relationships between components as well. It's just a little bit harder to see in this one, but just know that this is the parent, and then what is indented inside of it is the child. So this is parent, this child, and then this one has two childs. One is the subform, one is the sub list, and then the sub list has other ones of the sub, and then the subform as his child. So when I'm talking about trees, kind of like an upside down tree. So the root is kind of the top, and that's the main element, and it kind of branches out from there of the parent and child of each of the components as well. So then when you're passing in information through props, for now, you need to do it from parent to child, parent to child. You can't just go from one to the other. You can't go from sub to sub list, because those aren't really parent-child relationship. You have to go one more level in. or create one that has a shared parent and then do it in there. So that's what we did with the update. The last thing that we did is going to be your delete, and all delete is going to be a button. And with this delete, that is coming from props, from sub, and then from sub list, and then from sub. So exactly how we are passing in update, we're also passing in delete as well. So this will go ahead and make a Axios call to our Rails side, and it will do a delete HTTP verb as well as this particular URL pattern. So then it will go ahead and know to go to your subs controller destroy action. So subs controller destroy action of what it's doing. This will go ahead and delete it and find the one that we are using for, and then we're returning back a message. That's fine. We're not going to use that message if we don't really want to. If you want to, the message is there. So then with that, we are then going to go ahead and also delete it in the backend as well. So that's what we are doing here, is that when we are doing our CRUD action, we have to do it in both front end and back end. So this will do it in the back end. All of our Axios call will do in the back end. And then the stuff that we have in the promise handling, that does it in the front end. So we need to reflect that change in both areas. So that's all that we did so far. We also went a little bit ahead and did some of the topic stuff as well. And that's where we are going to continue on. But is there any questions about what we did so far with the subs before we move on to topics? Okay, so again, ideally, this is the goal of what you want to have happen, is for all of the CRUD actions to work inside of a particular model in your front end as well as inside of your back end as well. And you need to do that for each of your levels of your models. So let's go ahead and talk about our next level, which is topics. So let's go ahead and do this part here. So with topics, that is going to be handled after all of our subs is done, which is what we are currently doing right now, which is the sub. Actually, let me do one more thing. I'll do that a little bit later. I want to add the cancel button, but that one should be a quick, easy fix. So the next thing is going to be the topics. And with the topics, we are going to go ahead and have that display right under each of the subs here. So for now, we'll just have it all show up all in one page. Later on, I'll show you how to do things in multiple pages in a sec. So with the topics, it has a title, description, and it belongs to a single sub. So then you can go ahead and take a look at each subs and then all of their topics. And then here's the relationships and the belongs to. So what we would need to do after this is that you would definitely need to push up into your GitHub. And I already did that last night, so that should be good. And then the next part is to work on your models for your topic. So then when you go ahead and create the topic, you go ahead and have it define the title and the description for the topic. Once you create the topic, you would also include who the parent is because of the relationship. That will go ahead and include this line of code inside of your models. And then after inside of your models, you will then go ahead and have some validations for that topic. So the only validation that we have is that it has to be presence of, and the maximum amount that we have is this description here. So that's what we have there. So then after our models, we need to also double check our database to make sure that that is good. This will create a migration file, make sure that those fields in this foreign key has been created. So then when you go ahead and migrate, all of the stuff for topics should be all good to go. The other thing that we need to do is that we also need to define the relationship from sub to topic. So this already defines from child to parent. You also need parent to child. So here inside of the sub, we has a has many relationship with the topics. So it'll be has many topics and then dependent destroyed. Again, what this part of the code is that you only need to do it for has many and has one. You don't need to do it for the belongs to. It's only for the has many and has one. This will go ahead and once you delete the parent, it will also delete all of his children. I'll show you how that would look inside of the front end because then you'll kind of visualize a little bit better. So that's what we have there. After you are done with the next level, you are then going to create the controller. And we already worked on the controller as well for the topics. So we kind of planned ahead when we talked about that. And with the topics, we also created the routes. So let me go there as well. And when we are creating another level of routes, we need to go 2 levels deep. So this will go ahead and create for us the route to lead us into our topics controller. So that will go ahead and create this for us for topics. So based off of the HTTP verb and then the pathway URL pattern, it will lead us somewhere inside of our particular controller that we have. So let's take a look at the controller. The controller follows the same pattern. The only difference is that after the pattern, you need to change anything with a capital T to @parents.children. That's the only thing. And if you are doing that correctly, this is how your child one will look like. And then this is all of the CRUD actions on the controller side. We also need to establish who the parent is because of the relationship. So we also need to have this line of code as well. So this is what a child controller will look like. So now this is where we're caught up with our application. It took a little bit while to explain everything and how it connects and how we'll be working with everything. So the next step of us to do is that we already did our second model with our validations and associations. We already filled out the routes as well as the controller. So then the next part is that we are doing each of the views for the topics for each of the CRUD actions. So what that means is that I am essentially doing this part all over again, but instead of sub, I'm doing it for a topic. So that's what we are doing next, is that we're doing the front end so that it will go ahead and work for front end and back end for the topic. And this is where things will kind of look a little bit weird, just because for now, everything will all be in one page. So I'll kind of will show you that. And then later on, after the break, I'll show you how to break things up into different pages. Because ideally, if you have everything in one page, it is going to look a lot messy and a lot big, super quick. But ideally, we would need to have different pages, right? Like even looking at this reference sheet. Imagine if I have all of these references on one page. It's going to be a little bit hard to navigate. So what we'll do is that we'll talk about how we can navigate to different pages. And that's what we'll talk about in a short while. And then with that, we are going to have a page for most likely topics as well. So that's really up to us and also up to the design as well. And this kind of is talking a little bit ahead. So you don't really need to worry about this until later, is that your front end could change drastically depending on how you want things to look and how things you want to have functionally work. So what we have here might work for some cases, but let's say that you're building this project for someone else. Let's say that they actually don't want this button. They want it to be on a whole nother page, or they want it to be just the adding, you can't edit or delete. So that's where you need to go ahead and kind of see those changes and accommodate to those changes inside of your front end there. But regardless, you need to still do all of the CRUD actions. Even though that if your client or whoever it is that you are building the project for, if they don't want some of the features, it's easier to take them out because it's already there. You can just like comment it out, or you can just move them somewhere else. But it's a little bit harder for you to add in something new. So that's what we are going to be doing. And again, let me kind of go into more about what we are going to be talking about more next week and the week after and the week after that, is that right now we're not going to worry about styles. We are going to be worrying about functionality. So everything should work like it should from there. Later on, we are then going to style this to the way that the project would want. And we can do a little bit of styling here and there when we are building out the functionality or to put stuff into a different page. But most of the stuff is that we can't really think of what we are doing until we can get these designs, or until we know what they are going to be looking at. So let me kind of give you an example of what we are going to be building out next week. So you can kind of visualize kind of the end goal of everything here. So this is what I was talking about, is that take a look at what you see on what we have currently versus what our final product would be like, because it's still a long way to go. So that's what we have. Everything is all on one page. But if we go inside of this particular project of what we will be building out next week, which is a to-do list, this will be more of what it will look and where everything will be laid out. So here is a lot different than here, right? So here we have like stuff that are centered and stuff inside of columns and also nav bar and stuff like that. But here, this is where the functionality will come into play, is that we'll have one for list. And then for all of the lists, we need to go ahead and display all of that functionality here. So we actually technically already have all of this working for a particular model. It's just that we don't have these other pages of the home or the about page. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So here you can see that we also have a form. So here's our form. We just need to style it to be a little bit more like that. And then we also have a list. Here's our list. So the main functionality is still all there. It's just styled a little bit differently. And then the other thing that we have is like an edit and delete. And then when you hit on edit, it will open up the form. That's what ours does already. Again, most of it is just styling. And then if we go to the to-dos, that will lead into another page. So that's something that we would probably need to kind of think ahead about, is that if we do see this and we do see that the next level of the model is on another page, then we need to design it like that. Because right now, we're only having stuff in one page. We can have it in multiple pages, and we'll use React Router for that. So that's kind of like the end goal, is that the functionality is still there. Like we're still adding, updating, deleting, and going through all of our CRUD actions. It's just styled a little bit differently. And this style and this project is going to be different style than another project of what we're doing 2 weeks from now, and then what you're doing for your homeworks and what you're doing for the hackathon. So all of those will be different. So you can't really have a good pattern for how you are building yourself. You have to just really go off of what you are given. But the main thing is that all functionality, those are all going to be the same. So instead of focusing on how it will look or how it will kind of play out, mainly focus on the functionality. And that's what we're really going to hit a home run on, is this ReactJS CRUD actions here. So this pattern of what we are doing, regardless of how it looks in the front end, we will always be doing these CRUD actions following this particular pattern. So this will rarely ever change for when we are doing things. So let's go ahead and CD into your project if you haven't already. And we're actually going to prep up some of the items for us to work with, and then we will go into our topics. So luckily for us, all of the backend stuff for topics is all good to go. Now we need to go into the front end. So what I want to do right now is that I want to go ahead and, let me see, we are going to just display for tests a place for me to display all of the topics. So right now I don't have a way or a place for me to show all of the topics yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead, and typically when we are working inside of the front end, that would always be inside of the client folder. So inside of the client folder, sources, components, we will have multiple folders for each of the components. And this is just for organizational sake. I would create a folder within the components for each of your models. So one of them that we are going to be creating is going to be topics. So all of our subs components and anything that has to do with sub, that goes inside of that particular folder. So we're just being a little bit more organized. Here, we're going to do the same thing. We are actually going to have the exact same layout, but it will be in a different folder of what we have here. And then later on, when we go into comments, that would also be for comments as well, and what we are going to be working with from there. So that's what we are going to be doing, is that we are going to be worrying about the topics here. So yeah, and then shared is something that we are using throughout all of our pages. So that's what shared is. And we'll be using that when we are doing navigation for our nav bar, and then anything else that we are sharing as well. So for now, let's go ahead and inside of this folder, all your folders inside of React is going to be lowercase, just so you can avoid errors going forward. We are going to create a file called topics plural. Topics plural. And for now, just to test things out to make sure that everything is all connected, I am going to do topics plural and then pass in some props, but that could be empty for now. That's totally fine. Inside of my return, this is what it is that I'm going to display. And what I am going to display for now is going to display the parent information and then topics here. So for now, I'll just say topics, and then I'll just do export default topics. Right now, it's just an empty component, and it's not going to be used until we use and import this somewhere else. So let me show you what I mean by that. So inside of our sub singular, so sub.js like so, this is where I want to go ahead and use that topic here. So then I'm going to have topic, so import topic from .. So I need to go out one folder and then into the topics folder and topic like so. So then we are going to go and display and render that. I don't know, probably, yeah, I'll probably do it here. Like so. And something else that I want to do is to do a cancel button for this form. So I'm going to put this all in one fragment so I can return multiple things at once. And then I'm actually going to do the exact same button, but change it a little bit so that this will say cancel. So that way, when you are editing, you can edit. If not, you can just press cancel and you're no longer editing. So that's just something else that you can do. But yeah, let's go here. So something else that you can do is that at this level, I can go ahead and pass in a few elements. The thing that I can pass in is my parent element here. So let's go ahead and pass that in. So if I want to do sub ID here, then I'm going to refer to that as ID, because the ID here refers to the ID of the sub. So that's where this ID is coming from. And then you can also pass in the title if you want to as well. But I'm going to be more specific because topic also has a title. So I'm going to do subtitle like this. And this one will be the title of the sub here. So I'm inside of the sub component and I'm passing in the sub's information to his child. That's what this is doing here. So let's go ahead and let me slack this out. So at this point, well, let me go ahead and make a little bit of changes in the other file real quick. Is that here I can go ahead and pass in some props. So the prop that I passed in is the sub ID. That one is the property that I'm having here, which is the ID of the sub, and then also the subtitle. Subtitle like so. So then what I can do here is that inside of my H01, I can go ahead and do the subtitles, '(s), topics. And then let me go ahead and slack this out now of my topics. And then we'll start up our server. And then we'll kind of work through that there. So let's start up our server. Inside of the client folder, that will be a yarn start. So make sure that you're doing the client to the yarn start here. And then inside of your Reddit 20summer22, that would be this line of code here to start your backend server. So make sure that you do those in the respective place here. If you ever see a proxy error, what that means is that you probably didn't have your Rails server running, or it might be on the wrong port, or there's something wrong inside of your inside of your package JSON. You might be missing this line here. So again, if you do see this, double check if you have your server running. Also double check this, make sure that is correct. So let me go ahead and refresh my page. And now you can see that there is a cooking topic right here. So that is cooking, parent, and then this is the topics that we have here. It's a little bit hard to see because most of it is just going to be about styling and design. Again, we'll focus more on that later. The main thing is it's going to be functionality. So what we are going to do next is that, let's see, is that we're going to work through the functionality of topics, and then we are going to kind of clean it up a bit by putting it on a different page. So that's what we are going to be doing next. And then we'll go to the next level, which is comments from there. So let's go ahead and work through our topics here. And I am going to start off with my topics. So let me show you where I'm getting this functionality from, which is inside of the sheets, and it will be in your React CRUD actions here. So I'll open this side by side so you can kind of see where it is that I am pulling this information. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of work through that. So let's go ahead and do this part first to go ahead and to work on the index action of your topics. So first thing that we need is that we need a place for us to store all of our items inside of our front end. So let's go ahead and import our useState, which is our hook to go ahead and store items, and the useEffect, which is another hook for us to go ahead and be able to run logic based off of a callback action. And the callback action is going to be when we are displaying something and then when we are not displaying something. And then the other thing that we are going to be importing is going to be Axios. Let me kind of zoom out here so you can kind of see everything at once. Axios is going to be our waiter or waitress. That will go ahead and allow us to communicate from one application to another. So this will communicate from your React to your Rails. That's what Axios helps us do. And what it communicates is that what it wants to do. So it's very similar when we are ordering at a restaurant. You need to tell the waiter or waitress of what it is that you want to order. So that's kind of what Axios does, is that it kind of takes your order, takes it to where it is going to be applied, and what you get back is either something you asked for or something else. So then let's go ahead and have a place for us to have all of our topics. So I'm going to have a topics here and then set topics, following this pattern here of all of our model names, plural, and then set model names like so. Set that equal to useState. And that is what we'll be doing there. And then we'll go ahead and do a useEffect here, following all of that syntax as part of the pattern. And we need to do this particular pattern for our get. But here's the catch. This works for a parent. The reason being is that our routes is slightly different because our associations are different. So one thing that to note is this is towards the bottom, is that for a component that has a parent and child relationship, the pattern of the Axios call is slightly different. So that means that everything is the same. So what we are doing here is the exact same. It's just that this URL will match with what we have in our routes. That's the only thing that that is saying, is that this will be different. So it will go ahead and include the parent's name in the parent's ID. So let me show you what I mean by that. Is that let's go ahead and we'll do an Axios call. And for this Axios call, I do want to do our get, which is our index route here. So in order for me to do that, I need to go ahead and do a get request. And then with this, I can go ahead and do our get request. And then we need to go ahead and do this URL pattern. So what this URL pattern is /API/sub, the sub ID. So that means that we need to include the parent's ID and then topics. So this means that I need to do some string interpolation. So with the backticks, so /API/subs/ the interpolated value of the sub ID. And luckily for us, this sub ID is being passed down through props. So inside of each of our sub, it has its own ID because it's a unique primary key. Within that sub, we are then going to grab that, pass it as a sub ID to topic, and then we can use that sub ID inside of here. I don't know what that was. That was weird. And then we can go to topics. And then after that, we can continue on to the pattern because that's the only thing that will be changed here is that this URL would change because of the association. So then we can go ahead and do this part right here. So we can do it then with the response coming in. We are going to go ahead and do a set model name. Oh, so not set model name, set topics. That's the model name is topics. And then res.data. And then with our error handling, we'll just cache the errors for now. That works. So this will go ahead and work, but right now we don't have any sort of data for us to work with. So we need to work on the add functionality next. So we'll come back to the topics and display them, but right now we don't have any topics to display. So that's why it's really hard for us to work with when we are going to try to display something. So one of the things to kind of get done beforehand is the add functionality. So that way you are adding stuff, taking a look at it, and then update and delete comes after those. So that's what we have here. So let's actually do the add functionality next. So following this pattern, it will be add the model name, which is add topic equals the topic here. And what I am going to be doing as well is that following this pattern, it looks like I need to do an axios.post. The reason that it is a axios.post is that in this case, I want to go to the create function inside of my controller. To do that, it will be post, and then it will be this URL pattern right here. So it'll be post and then /API/sub, and then we need to interpolate the sub ID, and then /topics, plural. Now that is good. We are then going to go ahead and have the model name, which is going to be topic singular. And then following the pattern of what we have as a response for what happens when we get what we have back, we're then going to do a set topic of all of the ones that was already there, which is topics. This is incorrect. I need to change that real quick. And then we are going to be doing res.data. So yeah, that should be flipped. So yeah, I think that's a typo there. So let me make sure that the rest is good. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead and do what you see here, not this pattern. That's a small typo. I'll probably make that fix during the break there. So then once we go ahead and catch, this is going to go ahead and catch the errors like accordingly. Okie dokie. So that is the function that we created. To get it to actually work, we need to build out the form. So that's what we'll be doing. After our break is that we need to build out a topic form. And this is where it kind of deviates. There is actually no pattern for the form. It kind of goes off of what we have already, and it will look slightly different because, again, not all forms will look the same. Like what you see in my form here would be different on a different page. So that's why there's technically no pattern, but I'll show you the key elements that a form has. So let me go ahead and Slack this out for you for the topics of what we have so far. Well, actually, let's actually set this up. So we need to go ahead and do an import topic form. Oh my goodness, there we go. And this is from the same exact file topic form. And then I want to go ahead and display that right after I do this. So let's render that component out. Something that I also want to do is that I also want to pass in the add function inside of this here as props. So that way the form knows how to add, is passing this function in as props here. Right now you should get an error and it's a module not found error. That means that we haven't created it yet, or there's something wrong with our imports or exports. So that's totally fine. We'll actually fix that error when we come back from break. So here is the topics plural. Let's take a quick break. We'll go back at 7:20 Mountain Time. And then when we come back, we'll go ahead and work through the rest of the CRUD actions there. Okay, let's go ahead and get back into it. So right now we have an error, and that error is that module not found. It's trying to import or use topic form, but it doesn't know what that is. And the thing with that is that we haven't created that yet. So let's go ahead and create that. So that'll be topic form like so. So with your topic form, this is how typically your form will start to look like. And again, this wouldn't be written anywhere but the lecture notes and then inside of our projects of what we are going to be using. So that's kind of where you can find this, because all your forms will look similar, and you'll get to see that in a sec of how they would look similar from your sub and then to your topic. It's just different things that we are including there. So one thing that we are definitely including is going to be our state, because we are going to be storing in some items with our form. And we are also going to, going to create everything inside of our form as well. So first things first is to create the initial component of topic form. And with topic form, we are passing in a prop. The prop that we are passing in is that we are passing in the add topic function to this form. So let's go ahead and bring that in as well, of the add topic. And then it would be like so, what we are going to be returning. But before we forget, we are going to do an export default of topic form. And then I am going to go ahead and return just an empty pair of fragments for now, a h1, h1 for now of create topic. Now we'll go ahead and get rid of the error, and then it'll display what we have in our JSX for all of them. So with that, we can go ahead and start to build out our form. First things first, we need to have a place of where we are going to be storing in that object that we are creating. So let's go ahead and call that object topic and then set topic like so. And then after that, we are going to use our use state here to go ahead and store it inside of an object. And this object will have all of the items that a topic has. So it has a title, and it also has a description. So those are the fields that it has there. This is where I pulled that from, is title and description. If it's a string and a text, the default value would be like this. But if it's like an integer, like let's say we are storing someone's age, by default, because age is an integer, make sure that the default value is matching up with that data type. So if it's an integer, then the default will be 0. If it's a Boolean, like let's say if they are friends with you or not, then it would be a Boolean of like false or true. So make sure that when you are having the fields, you also match up with their data types. But for this one, we only need these two because they would both work for string and for our text as well. So then let's go ahead and create our form. And then with our form, we'll actually have a function of on submit. So this is what happens when we submit the form. And what we want to have happen is to go ahead and do a handle submit function. What that handle submit function is a function that we'll be creating ourselves called handle submit, and it will be taking in the event. We'll talk about that a little bit later, and we'll start to fill that out later as well. Next thing that we are going to be doing is that we are going to be doing an input for all of our fields. So we need to have a way for them to type in the title and another way for them to type in the description. So all of your, whatever field it is that you do, it needs to have a name, a value, as well as an on change. Those are the mandatory fields. The other ones are going to be like required and placeholder. Those are going to be optional as well. So here, this will represent what this input is for. And this one is for the title of the topic. This one here is going to be where we are storing the value. The where we are storing the value is going to be topic.title, like so. And then this onChange function, this will be a function that we are going to be doing. And with this function, we are going to go ahead and have it be able to store what they are typing into our state. To do that, we are going to set the state of set topics to an object that would have everything that was already there, plus the title to be e.target.value. So e.target.value will go ahead and grab what the user is typing. That's what e.target.value is. The rest of this stuff will go ahead and will save whatever they're typing to our state, to our storage here. So that is for the title. And that will go ahead and give us this particular box here. I'm going to go ahead and give it a title and also a label too, so we know what this is for. Title. For our text input, because text is a slightly bigger field, I'm actually going to have it as a text area, not a input. Text area is a slightly bigger type of input box. So it's, instead of a little line, you can have a whole box like this for the text area. That's more for HTML and stuff. Inside of here, the exact same thing is that we need a name. We also need the value. And then the onChange. Very similar to what we have above here. So the name is, what is this field for? This field is for your description of the topic. So let's go ahead and do that. The value is where we are going to be storing it. That will be topic.description. And then the onChange is going to be the function to go ahead and change that particular value. So then that will be set topic. We'll have everything that was already there. So we're spreading out that content, but the description will be e.target.value. So that's what we'll have there. We'll also have it be required as well. I won't have a placeholder for this. I'll just go ahead and just have a label of description. And then the last thing that we need inside of our form is a submit button. And then this one will be type of submit. So that will generate for us this form for our topic for each of our subs. Okay. So now when we go ahead and fill out this form right here of the topic form, right here, whatever we are typing, it should, if it works, it will go ahead and store what we type into the right place inside of our state. So for example, for cooking, one topic for cooking is that we are going to do BBQ, and that will go ahead and store it inside of the title because I typed it inside of the title box. That should store it in the title. And this one will be summer vibes. Sure. And that will be like the description that we have. So you have those two working, and how you know it's working is that when you type in the title and the description, that should update the state of what it is that you're typing. So that, so far, so good. Again, to get to your dev tools, you would do a right-click inspect, or you can do Command-Option-I. And then it will only work inside of a React project. So inside of here, and with the little carrots, it will be components here. And then you can look for it, but oftentimes I would just go ahead and type it. So topic form, because if you look for it, you don't know which topic form it is because we technically have multiple. So let's go ahead and do that. So yeah. So now, what happens when we are going to be submitting a form? Because right now, nothing happens. So if I submit the form, the default stuff that happens is that it actually clears out my form. It also loses it from state, and it also puts it inside of my URL, which is something that we don't want. So what we need to do when we submit is that we need to prevent the default. So that way we can avoid all that stuff happening. So now that when I go ahead and submit my form, when I type in something, nothing happens. I still have my information inside of state, and it doesn't have and post it inside of my URL. So that will go ahead and prevent the default action from working. The next thing that I want to do is that I want to go ahead and add the topic, what the topic that it is that I am going to be adding. So that is going to be stored within state. So whatever they are typing in for the topic, we are storing that inside of our state, and then it will go ahead and add that into our topics that we have here. So we'll run this functionality here. So then after that, we are then going to go ahead and we are going to, let me see, reset the form. So right now, when I go ahead and add, it will go ahead and add. But right now, it will keep what we have inside of our form. So one thing that we do need to do is that we need to reset the form. And the best way to do that is to set your state back to what it was originally. So that's how you reset the form here. And that's all you need to do for the form is those steps there. And then once you go ahead and add it, it should go ahead and run that functionality. And then you can check in your server. And when it does the insert, that means that it inserted it into your database as well. So let's also check your topics. And inside of your topics component, that should go ahead and have some objects for us to work with. But now we need to focus on displaying them. So let me Slack this out, and then I'll actually compare this form with the form that we have for the sub real quick. Because again, they're very similar. It's just different fields. We're dealing with different objects, but the component, the way that we are handling it is very similar. Let me see. I don't know if this will look good side by side, but we'll try our best here. I'm going to zoom out a bit. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, here is the form side by side. You might have to zoom in a bit if you would want, but the main thing is that we are having initial state here and here to store our object. That's still the exact same. This use effect is for edit, so we'll be doing that later on. This handle submit also looks the same. We're still preventing default. This is for edit here, adding, and then we are clearing out the form. This part is slightly different. The reason why it is different is that it has different fields. So that's why this form and this form, they have similar qualities. Like it has the on submit, that's the same. But the input here, this is for a title, this is for a title. That should be this very similar, but this is title for topic, and that one is the title for sub. So that is where it kind of deviates from that here. And this one also has a description. This one only stops at title. So it would need another input field for that there. So as you can see here, from one level to another, this part should look very similar. So it should follow that particular pattern. It's just that depending on how many fields you are and what their data type is, your forms will look slightly different, but the functionality is still there. Okay, so that will go ahead and it will run this, match it up with your routes, go ahead and add it into your backend if everything looks good. And then this will go ahead and add it to your front end. So let me go ahead and kind of write out some notes here for you. So this will grab all topics from backend. And then here, this will store them within our component state. So store them in our front end. So this here, this line right here, this will add into our backend. So this will add a topic. And then this line right here, this will add it into the front end. So add a topic to our front end. And we need to do both. The reason is that with the data that we have in our front end and our back end, they should also be the exact same. So yeah, so that is why we need to do both this and this here. And both of them will do accordingly. Okay, so next thing that we are going to work on is that we need to display the stuff that we created. Because right now, if I create a topic, it works, but as a user, I don't know if it works or not, right? So what we need to display to have the user understand that it actually works is that we need to display all of the topics for that particular sub. So let's go ahead and work on that component next, which is the topic form. Topic, not form, topic list. That's what I meant. I think at this point, words will start to look weird when you are typing them. That's totally fine. Like some words really trip me up because they look very weird when you are typing them. Like the word topic is starting to look weird on me. Like it doesn't look like it's spelled right. Also, sometimes I would switch this from to form too, because you're working inside of a form. So be sure you have everything looking good and trust your instincts for sure. With this topic list, I am then going to display that here as well. And where I'm going to display that is just at this particular level. One thing that I am going to be passing in is going to be my, let me see, going to be my topics here. That's what I want to pass in for now. So I want to pass in my topics of all of the topics that are coming in from my backend. Sweet. So here is your topics plural. And then we are going to create that component because right now it gives us this error. And again, anytime that you see this error, that means that you need to check your imports and exports, or you don't have that file yet. In this case, we don't have that file yet. Yeah, let's go ahead and create that file. It'll be topic list. Man, that word looks weird. And then let's go ahead and create our topic list. So with our topic list, we are going to go ahead and define that here and then pass in our props. And I'll show you, if you don't know the props, where you can find the props. Because let's just pretend that we don't know the props. So I'll show you where you can find that here. We're going to do a parentheses return. So that means that we don't have to say the word return. The reason why we are doing it this way instead of this way is that when you're doing a curly brace return, you can return other logic like functions and use state and all that. But you have to explicitly say return. But here, when we do parentheses, we don't have to say that return, and we're just displaying. We're not doing any other logic that requires functions or use state or anything. Okay. Another thing that would pop up as errors is that if you forget this line, you would also get a export default was not found. That's exactly what that means, is that inside of your topics.js, you might not be exporting it correctly. So make sure after you create it, export default it immediately so you don't forget. So right now I have my topic list here. Let me try to find that inside of my components real quick. Topic list like so. And here, if you don't know the props, like let's say you didn't know what we are passing to the topic list, inside of your dev tools, if you go to that components, it actually displays the properties here. So I am passing in the topics, which is the array of objects. So that is coming from my other level, which is my topics like so. So that's where that's coming from. So you can find that out here where you can kind of trace it, or you can find that out here in your dev tools. So then I will go ahead and say like H3 of all topics, sure. And then I am going to do topics, and we'll go ahead and map it and reference each one of those as T. Map is just like another iterator that we have. Let me see. And then what we are going to return back is going to be all of the topics that we have. So I want to go ahead and do another component, call it topic. So I need to import this real quick of topic from /topic. And then we are going to go ahead and render that component here. And then I am going to spread out everything that that topic has. So that's what this is doing. I also need to pass in a key so it knows that each object is unique. So that's what you would need to do here. So this will go ahead and be the equivalence of me saying ID equals topic ID, title equals topic.title, description equals topic.description. So I can do all that and more when I'm spreading out the content of T here. So here is the topic list. And let's go ahead and create that component of topic. And then with this component, I'll export some stuff later. I need to go ahead and pass in other information inside of here. And again, let's pretend that we don't know what we are passing in, because sometimes you don't. Let's go ahead and return. This one, I want to do a curly brace return because I do want to do some logic later on for my edit. And then before I forget, let's just do a topic like so. So before I fill out this topic, let's see what I have for props for my individual component. So for the props, I have created that description ID, the sub ID, title, and updated that. So those are all of the fields that I have in props. The only thing I do need is going to be the ID, the title, and the description, because that's what I want to display. So let's go ahead and display that. So I'll just have like H1 of the title for now. And description like so, and a P tag. That works. And that's what we have for now. Let me see how that looks, if that's okay. So yeah, so here are all the topics. But here you can kind of see where things kind of is a little bit disorganized because you're kind of don't know where things start and where things stop, right? So it's a little bit harder to look at. When we have things in pages, that will kind of clean things up. But this is where all of the topics are displayed at. So when we create one, let's say this is BBQ, and then summer vibes. That will go ahead and display that here, and it will do our index and our show functionality. And here we go. So that will take care of our some of our CRUD actions. Let's go ahead and continue on with our other CRUD actions. And after that, I want to compare the topic components with the components we have for the subs. Because again, they will look similar. It's just slightly different because this is a different model. So let's go ahead and focus on our update. So let's do our update function next. So let's go ahead and pull that up. I'll just pull it side by side. So that's our controller. Here is our update. So this is the pattern that we are going to do our update in. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Now zoom out so you can kind of see what I am typing. So this would be, actually I should zoom out here. Extend this so I can zoom in. There we go. So here I am going to do cons, and then it will be my update topic. And then I need to pass in the ID of the object that I am updating and my model name, which is topic. So then it will be Axial's put request, but let's double check that with this. So if I want to do an update, this one right here, then it will be a put request and then /API/sub ID topics, and then I need to also include the topic ID as well. So the axials.put, then /API/subs, the sub ID, and then topics, and then let's also interpolate the ID of the topic as well. And then we are going to go ahead and display the topic. Then after that, we can follow our pattern. So with our pattern of how we are going to be updating is that we are going to create this variable here of checking for our updated items. So I'm going to do a variable, call it updated. I'm going to call it, yeah, new updated topics. So that way we can be a little bit more specific with our variable names. So then we are going to go ahead and do our topics here, .map. With that, we are labeling each of the model names by T. As we are doing that, we are going to do if t.id is equal to the ID of the one that we are updating. That means that we need to grab our stuff from the backend, which is what our object is being returned at. And we are setting that and returning that here. So this will update it in the backend. So update in the backend. This will update in the front end. We'll update in the front end. And then if anything is fine, then we'll go ahead and return that. And outside this pair of parentheses, we are going to do a set model name, which is set topic. And then it would be updated model name, which is this variable name that we have here. And then to catch our errors, that will go ahead and be right here. So that is our update topic functionality. So let's go ahead and bring this into our front end. And how I'm going to do that is going to be very similar of what we did, is that when we go ahead and edit, it will go ahead and edit and display the form there. So I'm going to have that as well. So let's go ahead and pass it down all the way to that particular level. So from our topics, let's pass it down to topic list via prompts. So topic of update topics to our topic list. Okay. So then here is our topics plural. And then let's go from our topic list and pass that from our topic list to our topic. So this would be update topic and then update topic here as well. So here is our update topic. And then we are going to go from our topic here to our update topic, bring that down one more level via props. Again, we're just passing information from one component to another. And then this is where we are going to kind of build out that functionality. So what I like to do to handle the update is to have some button. When you click on it, it'll just display the form. So that's typically how you would do an update. So let's go ahead and import our use state. That way it will keep track of whether or not we are displaying the form or not. So we're doing some conditional rendering here. Again, what conditional rendering is that it is going to be displaying a some sort of a, like whatever we are rendering depending on a certain condition. So let me show you what I mean. Is that here I am going to check for if I am editing, and a function to change that is set edit. After that, I'm going to use state to be false. So initially I'm not editing, so then I won't be displaying anything. So I am also going to reuse my topic form, because you don't need to create a whole nother form for the edit. It will just be redundant and it will do a lot of things that your form already does. So we're going to use the exact same form, but tweak it a bit so it will work for both update and add. So then let's go ahead and do our update topic form like so. And we are going to work with our conditional rendering. So here's how this works. We're going to be using a ternary. Essentially how a ternary would work is that you have your condition here, and then after a question mark, what happens when that condition is met? So what happens when the condition is met? And then after a colon is what happens when it's not met, or your else. So what else happens there. So that's kind of the format that we are following here. So then the condition is whether or not we are editing. So that would be either true or false here. If we are editing, let's go ahead and display our form. So let's just do our topic form. Else, what we want to do is that let's go ahead and display our buttons. So we'll have one button here that says edit. And that will go ahead and it will, when you press on the button, it will display the form. So let's go ahead and write out that functionality of on click of set edit to be false. I mean, not false, is already false, to be true. So that way, when I click on this button here, where did it go? Oh, there it is. It will go ahead and edit. I don't know where I'm displaying that yet. So yeah, I think I need to finish out this here. So editing, false, yep, that looks good. That looks good. So yeah, let me go ahead and create this. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to keep track of what's what now. Yeah, I don't have any errors, so I don't know why it's not rendering out that button. Interesting. Oh, this is also the wrong URL. Let me go back to localhost 3000. And right now, it should give us whether or not we are editing. Yeah, let me double check what's going on, because yeah, it should display by now. So this is a good way to kind of debug our items. So let's go into our components. Let's check out our topic singular. And I think it is displaying, but it might not be displaying correctly, actually, now thinking about it. Because like now it does display the form, but it's always displaying the form. We only want it to display when we are doing this here. So what we need is a anonymous function, because this one always will set it, but I only want it for when I click on the button here. So here, when I go ahead and click on the button, it should give me that particular edit button and show that as well. So yeah, so now that was working. So I was just forgetting an anonymous function because it is always calling it true, and it kind of confused itself because like it's going back from true to false and all that, and it's always displaying. So that's why it won't work there. So let's go ahead and do the same thing, but for cancel. So that way we can toggle the form on and off. So what that will do is it will create a cancel, and that will go ahead and close out the topic like so. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is to have our topic form to go ahead and pass in the information that it needs to update a particular topic. So the information that it needs is that it needs the ID. It also needs the title of the topic and basically everything else that that object has, description and also description as well. And then we also need the update topic function, which is what we are passing in. And we also need our edit function, which is our set edit function. So that way we can close out the form for when we are done. So that's what we are doing, is that we're utilizing the same form, but passing in different properties. So this is create, but because of them passing in different properties, it should also handle our update accordingly as well. So here is your topic singular. So inside of our form, we need to go ahead and handle that of what's coming in, which is our ID, our title, description, as well as our update topic and our set edit. So all those should be good. And then we also need to import our use effect as well. So we can go ahead and pre-populate the form. So let's go ahead and pre-populate the form. So using our use effect. And then here, we need to check for if they are editing. We know that if they are editing, if they are passing in ID as a prompt. So if they are editing, we are going to go ahead and do a set topic and pre-populate the form by having the title be the title and then the description being the description of what we are passing in. So that is the shorthand of having it say title colon title and description colon description. So that's what we need to do there. We also need to do a similar thing here because when we submit the form, it'll try to do an add. We don't want that. So when we do this, let's go ahead and also check for if we are editing. So if we are editing, let's go ahead and do our update topic, pass in the ID and the topic here. And then we'll also do a set edit to be false to go ahead and close out the form. And we're doing an add topic here. I guess, yeah, one more place would be here to do a very similar thing of conditional rendering. For if we are passing in the ID, then we will say edit. If not, then we'll say create. And that's the slight change we need for updates. It's not really a huge change for the form. We're just having it in addition, see if we are passing in this prop. If we are, let's just do the update functionality. So let me slack this out real quick. And then let me go ahead and have you look at this form compared to the form that we have for our sub, because now they should look very similar now that this handles both add and update. And this one will also handle both add and update as well. So yeah, so we have our use effect here, and then we are pre-populating the form. And then here we're also going to update it. And then here we also did some conditional rendering here. But here I said create, here I said add. It's just a message. So you can say whatever makes sense, right? You can say update, you can say add, or you can say create. So that's really up to you, or really up to the designs of what it is that they want. So again, functionality, it should all still be here. So let's see if that works. And this is where you should test as you go. Don't assume that it works because you type everything I typed, because oftentimes or not, you might be missing something, or you might be typing something incorrectly. We're all human, we all make mistakes. So this is why it's really important to always test out what it is that we are doing. So here we are going to be editing a topic. So let's go ahead and edit this topic. What is this? This one is for our something for cooking. We can do like ice cream. And then this would be like keep in a cold environment. Keep cool in cold environment. So this is where you'll actually go ahead and put in your data. It's this particular case here. Where is my ice cream one? Now I'm super lost. Let me see. I have a lot of ASDA stuff. Let's do this one again of ice cream. Oh, that's a fun. Yeah, ice cream. And then that one I can just leave the same. So yeah, that should make a change, but it's not. So that means that if it doesn't work like expected, you might have an error. Let's take a look. Inside of our console, we have an internal server error. So that means that there's something going on inside of our server. More likelihood, it would be this one here. So it looks like inside of my controller, I have this top sub.topics.find params ID. So it doesn't know what that case is. So let's look at line 52 and make sure that we have everything connected there. So then that would be our app controllers. API topic controller. And this means that it is trying to go ahead and set the topic here. And that looks good. That is following the right pattern. So it is the parent, which is this here. And I'm calling that before action here. And then it will be topics.find params ID. So that should be good. And I only want this to be run on your show update and destroy. So that's why that is running, is that we are doing an update. So that looks good. So the problem isn't here, is it in our controller? Our error might point to the controller, but now when we look at our controller, everything looks right. So the next place for us to look is what is communicating to our controller. And that is going to be our Axios call. So let's go back into topics and let's take a look at this particular case here, if it is passing in the right ID and the parent's ID as well. So at this level, let's go ahead and check for if we have your individual component to be able to know what the parent is. So yeah, so here I have the sub ID of 4. This also has a sub ID of 4. So it should have that parent here. Not only that, it should also grab the ID of the object. So let's check if they all have an ID. So that one has ID of 2, 1, and 6. So that looks good there. Something else that we can check for is that we can slowly start to see if we are missing anything. So let me see. Let's double check if this is the right URL path. So it will be axios.put. So let's see that real quick. Axios.put and then /API/subs /API/sub. You pass in the sub ID. That is the sub ID. We pass in the topics and then the ID of the topics. So that looks good as well. So what else is going on here? Let's also double check the associations, make sure that the associations make sense. So we do has many topics and then belong to sub. Yeah, that looks good. Nothing concerning there. And also when I am looking inside of my schema, it also has that foreign key constraint. Something that I am not certain of, but yeah, I think that would be topics. This would be topics controller. So yeah, so now I'm a little stumped here. So this is where I need to go ahead and we need to see what the error is. So what I am going to do is that inside of here, because this is where the error is going to be hitting, I'm going to do a binding.pry. So again, binding.pry is our debugger that will go ahead and suspend our code to take a look at everything that we need to see if everything is all there. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go ahead and do our update as well. And I think something that might be going on, it might be a validation issue. So let me double check that too afterwards. So let's edit this to be ice cream and let's do this and then submit. And that should hit our pry here. And it looks like it did. Go ahead and press Q if you are hitting your pry, and that will hit you to your little editor here. So you can go ahead and type in commands. So one thing I want to take a look at is what is my sub? So my at sub. So here it is nil. So when I'm trying to do an at sub here, it is doing nil. So that's kind of weird. So I'm not passing in the right sub. So let's go ahead and see what else I am missing, because right now it doesn't know what at sub is. So obviously when I do at sub.topics, it will go ahead and say that undefined method topics for something that's nil. So it doesn't know what sub is, and sub is defined here. And let me double check before action. Let me go ahead and do this before this and make sure order does matter. So I want to run this before I do any of this. So yeah, I think that might be it. Let me remove my binding.pry. Let me go ahead and exit out of here. And all I did was I just moved this from the top to the bottom because order does matter. I do want that to run before I run my set topics. So let me go ahead and do this real quick. Just got button mash here, and there we go. I think that was it. So yeah, there was a small typo. We went and fixed that. And the thing is that the set sub should be on top of your set topic. And I think that's what the pattern recommend us to do when we fill out the controller, probably. Yeah. So when we do a before action set parent, that should be at the very top. So yeah, so let me go ahead and select this out. There was a small typo there. And then we are going to do this here. So yeah, so now our update is up and running. So let's go ahead and take a quick small break. We'll come back at 8:15. And when we come back from our break, let's finish up the CRUD actions of our delete. And then we'll kind of go ahead and finish off topics with the CRUD actions there. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back at 8:15, and then we can go ahead and finish off the CRUD actions. Okay, let's go ahead and finish up the functionality. We had a small typo here for where we had to have this at the beginning, but we had it at the end, so that's why it didn't work. But everything should be good now. So now let's go ahead and work on the delete functionality, and then we can wrap up the topics, and topics should be all good to go too. So let's go into our topics plural, and then we'll go ahead and follow that pattern. And then this is going to be the same pattern of how we are going to be filling out our delete function inside of our front end. So then we are going to go ahead and let me expand this a bit. And we are going to follow that pattern to go ahead and start to fill this out here. So this will be const delete the model name, which is topic, equals ID. And all I need to do here is that I need to make an Axios call, but we need to double check that with the routes. So for me to go ahead and destroy something, I need to go ahead and do this pattern that we need here. So it will be delete, and it would be a API subs topics and an ID here. So /API/sub/ the ID of sub. So let's interpolate that. So ID of sub, which is our sub ID topics. And then we also have our topic like so, ID. So that will go ahead and delete it into the backend. Then we can go ahead and go back and follow the rest of the pattern. We can actually do this all in one line, but if you want to do it in multiple lines, you can have the curly brace. But if you want to do it in one line, you'll need the curly brace. So then we are going to do the response. With the response, we are going to do set the model name, which is topics, and then we are going to do the model name plural, which is topics.filter. And with that, we are going to be filtering out the T. And with T, it will be T.id that is not equal to the ID. So it'll actually get rid of the one that we are deleting, but keep all the ones that we are not deleting. So that's how it's deleting there. So then doing what we did with the update, we are also going to be passing this all the way down the component tree. So let's go ahead and pass this here from delete topic to delete topic. So that would be our topics to topic list. So that is this level here. And then from our topic list, we are going to pass that down one more level. So topic list to be passed, oh no, not topic list. From our topic list, we are going to pass on delete topic. And this will be delete topic like so. And then from there, we need to go one more level. So let me select this out for you all. And make sure you know if it's the correct file or not too. We are going into the topic, and then that will be delete topic like so. So then I am going to go ahead and have this be another button, but instead of set edit, it will be delete, passing in the ID. This will also say delete. Okay, and that is pretty much it for the delete. Let's see if this works. Let me go ahead and slack this out. We'll test it, and then that would wrap up all of our CRUD actions, front end and back end for our topic. Oh, this one right here. And then I am going to do this one. Let's delete this one as well as this one here. And it looks like it does delete. Awesome. So now we have all the CRUD actions all up and running for our topic, which is our second level here. So now would be a good time to add this to GitHub. So let me go ahead and stop this here. And then we'll review everything that we have. So when you're doing your GitHub steps, make sure you're doing it here and not in your client folder. So if you do Control-C, that will stop each of the servers. So Control-C. And then client is anything with the React stuff. This is anything with Get stuff and the Rails stuff here. So then let's do a Get add here. And then Get commit of front end of topic done. So that is our commit. And then we are doing a get push origin main. And that will go ahead and update what we have from our local machine to our other machine, which is inside of GitHub. Sweet. So let me see if that did update. And it did. Cool beans. So let me go ahead after class or during Will's presentation, I'll go ahead and update this. So it has the right pattern because there is some typos here I want to fix. So I'll make sure that that is correct so you can reference that a little bit later. Okay, so now we have all of the CRUD actions working on front end and back end for two models. One for the sub, so we can add, update, take a look at all the subs and take a look at a single sub and also delete for a sub. Same thing with topics. We can add, we can take a look at all of the topics. We can also edit and delete the topics as well. Now, the thing is that if we go one more level, you can kind of see it get a little bit more cluttered. So that's why I don't recommend to put a lot of things on the page. I would just go this much right here and then cap it off there. So it only goes to display two things per page, especially when you're doing a lot of CRUD actions, or you can have each model be its own page. That could work as well. So that's what I am going to be teaching. That one will be a quick topic that I'm going to do tomorrow. So that way we can put this on it to its own page. So what I would like you to do, and let me go ahead and make sure everything is good, is that for your homework assignment that is due on Thursday, which is tomorrow, go ahead and do whatever you can, right? So make sure that you are doing the models, controllers, routes, and then you can get to the views. And then after that, submit what you have. What I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to extend the homework assignment to be due next week. So for now, just submit what you have and what you have done tomorrow to the submission. That way I can get a good gauge about what we need to go over and what everyone is at with their projects. And then you can go ahead and finish that project up and submit that next week time. So don't worry too much about you don't have it done fully. Just go ahead and do what you need to for each level. So make sure that you're doing the models at each level, controllers, routes at each level, and then the views. And it's okay that you don't have all of the views done or all of them done, but that's just what you need to turn in for tomorrow. Next week is that you'll have a little bit more time, we'll have a little bit more practice, and you'll get to see a lot of things more. Then you can go ahead and submit the assignment with all of the CRUD actions working and all of the stuff working as well. So yeah, so that's with your homework assignment tomorrow. Just submit what you have. And then next week, that is where you should have all of the functionality working with. Does that sound good? Everyone good with that there? Sweet. So this is kind of, I'm going to take the first part of tomorrow to kind of talk about having different pages, because as you can see here, it's a little bit hard to look at, right? You don't know where things start, where things end. So I want to introduce for us like the ideas of different pages. So to kind of prep us up for that lecture, let's actually include this for each of our projects. So inside of our project, if we want to include pages inside of our client folder, make sure it's the client folder, we need to add in a package called React Router DOM. So React Router DOM is going to be a, sorry, not yarn, it will be yarn add. So React Router DOM is going to be a package that we will include inside of our client side, inside of our React side, that will allow us to navigate between pages. Because right now, everything is all in a single page. And that would work for if we have a smaller application. But right now, it's starting to get big, right? Even with 2 models, it's starting to get confusing. So let me kind of show you ahead of what React Router is. And you can take a look at the documentation of React Router. And we're using version 6. So if you go ahead and Google or look up a tutorial, make sure that it is version 6 and above, because all of the older versions, they do things slightly different. And the syntax and the stuff that they do is super different than what we are currently doing. So that's the thing is that this one was one of the changes that recently changed is React Router. And we'll talk a little bit more about React Router tomorrow. I just want to set it up today so that tomorrow we can talk more about that. The other thing to help us set this up is that inside of our index.js, we need to go ahead and we need to import it at a global scale and have our app be included inside of our routes here. So let me show you how to do that. And this is based off of documentation of what you would need to do. You can go ahead and follow the tutorial. First thing we need to do is to go ahead and add the initial React router. And then after that, we would need to go ahead and import our browser router, which is what we are doing next. So we import browser router. And what this will allow us to do is that whatever we wrap this component with, that would be in charge of our navigational routes. So now we are going to be talking about our navigational routes. The reason being is that right now we don't have any navigation. We only have 1 page. This will allow us to give us multiple pages and to have other things as pages as well. So after we installed it, we just need to follow the documentation. And this is the only configuration that we need to do is this configuration here. So let me go ahead and select this out. So then tomorrow, this is where we'll go ahead and pick up for where we are going to kind of separate things into different pages, and we can have more pages because again, right now it works, everything looks good, but everything also is in 1 page. So what I would like to do is that I would have to have a home page, an about page, and then we'll also talk about the sub as its own page and then topic as its own page. So that is our topic of React Router DOM there. And if you want to take a look at it, you definitely can, but we'll be going more to it tomorrow. So let's go ahead and add that into our GitHub as well. So we'll do a git add. Then we'll do a git commit -m of set up React Router DOM. And then git push origin main to go ahead and update those changes to GitHub. Something else that I want you all to kind of work on if you're not working on this is that to apply what you learned so far is that we went and we what 2 levels deep with the topics and the subs. And then we went and we did the front end and back end of each of those levels. So go ahead and apply that into your billboards assignment of how we are following this pattern, and then this pattern if it is a child. So your sub controller and all of the CRUD actions and routes and everything, that should look very similar to your first level, which is billboard or playlist, right? So this level should look very similar to your sub or your billboard or your playlist. One more level down would be artists, right? So this would be your artist level. So everything that we do here with topics, that's what we will do inside of your artist as well, with all of the front end, all of the back end, and everything in between. The last level is going to be your songs. That's going to be your comments. That would look a little bit similar to your topics. So what I am, let's see. I don't think that we'll have time tomorrow because I do want you to work on your projects a little bit more, but we can go ahead and have you work on your assignment tomorrow. And then what I'll do is I'll probably go ahead and record a video for me to work through the comments level with you all. So I'll probably release that more over the weekend if that helps. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll probably release it more on Thursday or Friday, and I'll do that level of the comments with all of the back end and the front end. So you'll have all that level. And then tomorrow we'll mainly talk about pages there. So that's what we'll do here. And then we'll kind of leave things off there. But yeah, any questions about any of this stuff? Again, you should be a little bit confused. Just work with what we have and apply that to your assignment. And again, submit your assignment tomorrow. We will go ahead and extend that to next week too. Awesome. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to switch the time over to Will. He has a few presentations and some information to talk to you about. You should all be good from there. Take it away, Will.
How's it going, Henry? How's it going, everybody? Awesome. Well, I have one presentation for you today, and it is just something I wanted to talk to all of us about in terms of the way things are at the moment and things that I think you should expect things to be in the future. And if you don't mind, if you want to give me a quick thumbs up, I'm just going to set up my presentation so I have these slides ready for all of you to look at. Let me get all this prepped and ready for everybody. All right, I'm going to share my screen and let me know if you see a quote that says, "You don't become a painter." That's how it starts. Give me a thumbs up if that a thumbs up icon. Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Haley. Awesome. Well, today's presentation is really kind of talking to us a little bit more specifically about the difference in the way that you're looking at something and the way that your mindset will be in order to become a successful developer in the industry. And I think a lot of you probably in the first 4 weeks of the course have gone through a lecture or have gone through some form of lecture or some form of class thinking that it all went over your head. Like, oh, I didn't get any of it. I didn't feel like I retained any information. And I felt like I didn't learn anything from that specific point in time. And that's going to happen. And I think this is something to really kind of look at. Let's start off with a quote here. And it just says that you don't become a painter, you just discover one day that you are one. And it's important to note that because we'll talk about it in a bit of exactly what we talk about and what we mean in terms of that. So the presentation I have today for all of you is really, in essence, how to become a real developer. And to become a real developer, to start off, is to focus right now on your education at the moment, not finding a job. And what I mean by that is if you're looking at job listings now, or you're worried about your future career and you're like, you know what, I need to learn this in order to get a job, or I need to learn this in order to, get hired. Really, just don't worry about that at this point in time. If you can, focus on your education solely at the moment and retaining as much information as possible. Even though you won't retain all of the information that you get every single day, now, since you have gotten kind of comfortable with the way that programming is, now we need to start changing our mindset towards certain things we see as negatives and turn them towards, or turn our perceptions from negatives into positives, specifically in one style or one form of development that you're going through. But before we get into that, I think the first thing we have to ask ourselves, if we do really want to succeed and if we want to become quote unquote a real developer, is to start with why. We need to know why we're doing this, why we chose this profession, why we chose this career, and why we chose this route. A great book that explains a little bit of some of that is a book called Start With Why. It's by Simon Sinek, and it's talking about how great leaders inspire everyone to take action. And it's something that's really interesting because, you know, we think a lot about, well, what do great companies look for when they hire someone? Well, the truth is, great companies don't hire just skilled people and motivate them. You can have all the skill in the world, but if you're not motivated to work hard, it doesn't really matter. Really, they would rather hire motivated people and inspire them. So even if you don't necessarily have the skills, but you're motivated and you're inspired to do so, that may be even more impressive to a certain employer. And when we think about this, a lot of this has to do with just the problems of the perception of what programming really is. For all of you that have come into this industry or that have come into this cohort thinking that programming wasn't exactly what it is, well, it's because society and media has taught us differently. Most of the time when we see, you know, the media show us what programming is, we see it something like this. I'm opening a Coke Zero, by the way, I'm sorry. And what I mean by this is, this looks like this person's writing code just off the top of their head, like it flows off of their brain. It's like they know every single line of syntax that was ever taught to them. Well, as you all have been through the course, you know that that is just not true whatsoever. And the truth is, very rarely do people know syntax and lines of code off the top of their head. That's just not what real programming or development is. So if you yourself at this point in time are thinking, oh, you know, I feel like I'm not learning anything because I don't know exactly everything that Henry taught to me the first day, I think the great thing to understand about that is that's normal and that's to be expected. Because really, most of the time, the reason why our code doesn't work or the reason why errors happen is really because of this. Perception here, we have 5 minutes and they'll be through the firewall and they're just typing as fast as possible. But the reality is, you probably just forgot a semicolon, you had a typo, or there's something very simple that's there that you just didn't see. And when you look at all of this as a whole, there's one answer to all of these problems. And it's that coding is hard. It's never been easy, but it does get easier at some point in time. And it's shown in this graph here. And this is talking about the difficulty of learning to code and installing new languages and time. A lot of people will go through and they find that it's extremely hard to learn how to program. And so they quit before they break this hump and things start to become easier. Unfortunately, to be absolutely honest with you, I don't think you're very high on this mountain just yet. Will you get there? Absolutely. It just takes time. But if in your mind you're trying to say, oh, I'm not learning this and I need to do it this way or I need to do it that way, I really think if you can, just trust the process that's in place right now. And if you can, over time, you will see that languages as well as concepts become easier and easier. At any point in time, will you naturally just have free-flowing code off the top of your head? Probably not. I've seen mids, juniors, seniors, I've seen speakers even Google simple lines of syntax. And it's because they know that as long as Google has those answers, I don't need to store it all into my brain. That's not necessary. Another great way to explain this is if you think you're not doing as well as you're expected, or you're forgetting key concepts, or you think like, oh, I should be doing better than I expected. If any of you went to the previous DevCon, which had a few students that were there, previous alumni students that were there to answer some questions, this was one of the answers of one of the questions they had a handful of years ago. And the question was, what was your day-to-day job like? And their response was about their day-to-day job was that a very small part of my job is writing code effortlessly. Most of my time at work is failing over and over and over again. That is why success in development is so sweet. And so we take another chapter out of the book of what we've learned out of programming, and we know that coding is hard, you're not stupid, and move on. There are going to be concepts you don't get the first time. There are going to be concepts you don't get the second time. And when Henry tells you, hey, you may not get this, we will go over this, he means it. He's not saying some of you may get it and some of you may not. He's expecting most of you to probably not understand that concept to start off. And that's okay, because your job as a developer isn't to know everything off the top of your head. Your job as a developer, even now as a student and in the future as an employee somewhere, or possibly an employer at your own startup, the real job as a developer is to learn by doing, and it's to get comfortable with it. What do we explain by that? And this is how we know whether you are starting to really think like a developer or not. And if you want, please, if you want to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down emoji, that would be awesome. Tell me if you have felt this thought process or mindset when you encounter a bug. Okay, so when you encounter a bug, what is your mindset towards that bug? Is it this? Or in the end, should it be more so like this? And that's the trick there, guys. The trick is probably, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of you, when you first see a bug, see that big red arrow up top, you go, oh shit, run. Something's wrong. I need help. I need someone to help me. I need someone to guide me, and I need someone to give me some answers. Well, the secret is, I'll tell you right now, that type of problem and question and that type of investigation will never stop, because when you're a junior, you're doing junior QA problems. When you're a mid, you're probably solving juniors problems. And when you're a senior, you're probably solving everybody else's. So if you do have this mindset now, we need to understand that this is the real mindset you need to have. And when you start looking at bugs going, all right, another challenge, how do I solve this? How do I figure this out? Not, do I know this off the top of my head and can I answer this immediately? It's, can I solve the problem that's ahead of me? Because when we really think about programming as a whole, we think about programming as, oh, I'm a good programmer when I write code without any bugs. But the truth is, that's not really what programming is. And Edgar Dijkstra says it best. He tells us that if debugging is the process of removing software bugs, then programming must be the process of putting them in. So in essence, when you are writing code and you are putting bugs in there, know that that is actually a part of the process. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not writing bad code. That's just the process of programming. And then the next step to programming is the debugging process. So now when you look at that, we need to look at the mindset of, okay, well, when we encounter a bug, we know instead of hope that there are no errors, we should expect it. And the next step should say, I will find you. Now, all of this is really easy to say, right? It's like, oh, well, Will, it's pretty easy to say it when you're not going through homework and you're not spending 30 minutes on one error, frustrated, wanting to throw your computer at the wall and not knowing what to do. And I get that. I get that I'm not in that specific position that you're in on a nightly basis, possibly, or throughout the weekend or throughout homework. So if we can, let's start figuring out what our own routine is in order to solve that problem. And this routine is called the cue routine reward cycle. It's actually from a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. There's also a few other books that talk about this as well. Another one is very famously called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, when talking about the power of habit, we just really want to start changing the way that we look at bugs and errors, because right now we're probably looking at it in a negative mindset. So the power of habit teaches us, and once again, I think this is important for all of you to know, because at some point in time, possibly when you do start interviewing for jobs and when you do start interviewing at companies, they may ask you what your debugging methodology is. So when you encounter an error, what do you do to solve that problem? I've heard that that has been asked before, and even if they don't ask that, you should know that nevertheless anyways. And each one of you may have a slightly different debugging methodology that fits more to your programming style, but at least know what those steps are. All right, so how do we start this? All right, let's talk about this specifically in a error / we're programming and finding bugs habit. So the step one here is our cue, a trigger that tells your brain to go into automatic mode. That trigger would be an error. Once an error comes up when you're going through and you're working on your homework assignment and you have some bug that comes up, that is the cue. And that tells your brain, okay, time to work and time to be the detective in our own murder mystery, really. And so we get into step two, and it's our routine. What is our routine? Well, I would probably look over my code first to see if there's any semicolons or any type of typos missing, then the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. Once again, that's on your own type of methodology, but kind of look through it and trying to find out what works best for you. Now, once you get through that routine and say you do solve your own bug at one point in time, and when I mean that you solve it, it's not that you solved it off the top of your head, it's that you were able to use the resources that are given to every developer, like the internet, like Google, like Stack Overflow, like resources like that. And once again, if all of that still doesn't work, you should definitely ask Henry or ask one of the TAs like Michael on Thursdays. That is something that we want you to do. We want you to be able to ask those questions. And even if it's slightly outside of class time, ask those questions towards Henry and Michael anyways. They would, when they have the chance, they will definitely put in that time to help you. But here, once you get through that methodology and you're able to solve it on your own, step three is the reward loop. And this is where you're tricking your brain into saying, okay, what I first used to look at bugs as a negative, I'm going to turn into a positive. And some of these little rewards can be a small piece of candy, or it can be a 5-minute walk, or it can be something that puts your brain into a mindset of going, oh, you know, I used to actually kind of hate these bugs, but now every time I solve one, I get something good out of it. You're tricking your brain into wanting to debug more and more often. And the real secret is the more you debug, naturally, the better developer you will become, because programming truly isn't just writing code. A part of programming is the process of debugging code as well. So once you've kind of looked through that and you go, oh, well, I thought programming was just writing. No, programming is writing, fixing, rewriting, and refactoring code. That's all the process of programming. So the better debugger you are, the better programmer you are in the end. So once again, I just want to close out here by saying, if you do have any mindset towards bugs, remember, it needs to be this mindset here. And if you do, the reward oftentimes may be just a little piece of candy you have on the side or whatnot, but it will feel a lot better when you're able to solve these bugs your own as well. It'll feel almost kind of like this. Or my even more favorite, the classic Tom Hanks, how you feel when your code works. And in the end, you'll really kind of figure out, as of right now, you probably don't feel comfortable calling yourself a developer, or you do, I'm not sure yet, but you don't really know whether you are. And you may never will, because really in the end, I believe that you don't become a developer. You just discover one day that you are one when you actually kind of like solving errors, and you kind of started writing code and you're like, oh, I actually kind of understand the logic of this, where a week ago I didn't. And over time, it's going to build more and more confidence into your own skills as a developer, and your own skills as a programmer and a debugger as well. And when you go through all of that process and you're able to go through all of those things, then you will truly start to find out and realize that you are a developer. And that's when things really start to come into place. But the first thing you need to do before any of that actually truly falls into place is to have the right mindset towards programming, and have the right mindset towards probably the least favorite part of programming for most beginners, and that is the debugging process. It is 8:48. I don't want to take too much time out of you. I do have some things I wanted to talk to all of us about in terms of the hackathon, but I'll actually talk about that to everybody, full and part-time, come Saturday, so everybody knows the prizes, the structures, and everything from there. The one thing I did want to talk to all of you about, if you are free this Saturday for lunch at 12:40, we do run a Pictionary event. It generally is an event that is cohort against cohort. So staff has a team, full-time has a team, and part-time will have a team as well. All of you that attend, you'll automatically get $5 in Venmo cash, a Venmo payment over to you. And it's a pretty fun time, and it's a pretty fun event. So I would highly recommend that all of you do your best to come attend that Pictionary event at 12:40. Before I do turn the time over to Henry, I wanted to let you know I'm going to be sending over in your Slack channel a not a payment link, a Google Drive link, and that Google Drive link will have a handful of questions for you. First things first, it will ask you for your t-shirt size. We're going to be sending you your DevPoint Labs t-shirt and some goodies as well that hopefully match your own little palette there that we have some questions in terms of your favorite chips, your favorite candy. And what we'll do is we'll send you a little care package with a t-shirt, some goodies, some swag as well. And hopefully you can use some of those goodies as your own little treat yourself reward for your own debugging methodology as well. I'll be sending that out right after this. I will also be sending out the slides to the presentation I had if you were interested in any of the memes I had, or hopefully more interested in the habit cycle. I will be providing it into your Slack channel as well. But other than that, that is all I have for you tonight. I hope I'm not missing anything, and I hope that helped all of you with just a little bit of mindset and maybe a little pick me up near the end of this week and heading into the hackathon this week. So I will turn the time back over to Henry.
Thanks, Will. But yeah, those are all very unique skills and things to think about all throughout the core, not just right now and not just then, but all throughout. So it's really good with that. I'm okay to release the class a little bit early tonight. Just kind of marinate over everything that we went over tonight. I'll have this recording up quite shortly. I'm actually going to put it in the same exact lecture that I put the other one. So it will be at the one that I called the React as views. So that's where I'm going to be putting this lecture video. So yeah, if you don't have anything else, I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good night.
I'm sorry. One thing really quickly for all of you. So I'm sending this out to you right now in the Slack channel for Part-Time Web Dev Summer. If you could fill these out to me whenever you're able to, it just, with some basic information, t-shirt size, kind of some preferences on snacks. I wanted to let you know that the DevPoint Labs t-shirts, it's this t-shirt here, but it's purple. They run generally one size smaller than you would expect. And I mean that by they run one size if you're going to wash and dry them. If you don't wash I hope you wash your clothes. If you don't dry your clothes in a dryer, you can go with like the normal sizing. But if you are going to plan on drying that DevPoint Labs t-shirt, I would run a size larger than you expect. Cool. Awesome. Well, since Henry let y'all out early, I'm not going to keep you guys too long anyways. But yeah, just remember to check on those sizes. Fill that form out. I just put it into Part-Time Web Dev Summer. I'll put the PDF slides in there, and I'm out of here. See y'all.
See ya.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.